The night I met Linda Martinez in person, it lasted maybe 11 minutes. That's it. 11 minutes at a Flying J truck stop outside Flagstaff, Arizona, on a Wednesday afternoon in March, 3 years before she died. I remember because I'd just come off a brutal 14-hour haul from Albuquerque. My eyes felt like someone had pressed thumbs into them, and all I wanted was black coffee and silence. I pulled into the lot, found a spot between two Kenworths, and walked into the diner like a man who'd forgotten what it felt like to sit down. She was at the counter. Red Kenworth ball cap, a jacket that had seen better years, both hands wrapped around a mug like she was trying to keep them warm. I didn't know it was her at first. You get used to voices on the CB. You build a picture in your head without realizing it. Desert Rose had a voice like honey poured over gravel, smooth but tough, the kind of voice that made the dark stretches of I-40 feel a little less empty at 2 in the morning. The woman at the counter looked like she'd been driving for 20 years and had the posture to prove it. She glanced over when I sat down 2 stools away and she said, without any preamble, the way truckers talk, "Your midnight cowboy. I recognize the rig." I told her she had good eyes. She smiled and slid the sugar caddy toward me because somehow she knew I needed it. We talked for 11 minutes about road conditions, about a stretch of construction near Williams that was adding 40 minutes to every eastbound run, about a diner in Needles that had the best green chili this side of New Mexico. She finished her coffee, set a folded bill on the counter, and stood up. "Stay safe out there, cowboy." That was it. She walked out, climbed into her Kenworth, and pulled back onto the highway. 11 minutes. I thought about those 11 minutes a lot after the funeral. My name is Dale Morrow. I'm 52 years old, and I have been driving long haul for 28 years. I tell you this not because it matters to the story exactly, but because you need to understand what kind of man I am before you understand what happened to me on Interstate 40 last February. I am not a man who believes in things he can't explain. I grew up in Odessa, Texas, the son of a roughneck and a woman who kept the books at a hardware store. We didn't talk about ghosts at the dinner table. We talked about what broke and how to fix it. I carried that with me into adulthood, into marriage, into the cab of every truck I've ever driven. When something happens on the road that I don't understand, I file it away and keep moving. That's how you survive 28 years behind the wheel. My ex-wife, Karen, used to say I was more comfortable with highways than with people. She wasn't wrong. We divorced 12 years ago. Not because of any single catastrophic event, but because of 1,000 small absences that piled up like unpaid bills until the debt was too big to settle. I don't blame her. I was gone more than I was home, and the times I was home, some part of me was always still out on the road, listening to the CB chatter in my head. We have a daughter, Melissa, who lives in Fort Collins and teaches 2nd grade and has her mother's patience and my stubbornness in equal measure. We talk on the phone more than we see each other. That's a fact I'm not proud of. I tell you about Melissa because of something Linda said to me the night everything happened. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The point is this: I am a practical man, a skeptic, a man who has driven through every kind of darkness this country has to offer, literal and otherwise, and come out the other side with both hands on the wheel and his eyes on the road. What happened on February 18th tested every single one of those things. The run started in Chicago. I picked up a load of consumer electronics. Box televisions mostly, the kind that end up in big box stores and strip malls, and started west on I-40 with a delivery window in Phoenix and 2 days to make it. February in the desert isn't what most people picture when they think of Arizona. It gets cold out there at night. Not Minnesota cold, but cold enough that the heater runs the whole time, and the stars have a hard, brittle quality to them, like they might shatter if you look too long. I'd been driving since early morning and I was making good time. Stopped in Albuquerque for fuel and a meal, the kind of meal that truck stop diners specialize in. Technically food, functionally fuel, not much else. Eggs that had been on the griddle too long, toast the color of old wood. I ate it without complaint and got back on the road before the sun fully set. By the time I crossed into Arizona, the sky had gone completely dark, and the desert had turned into the thing it becomes at night. Which is to say, nothing. Just 2 lanes of asphalt cutting through a darkness so complete that your headlights feel like the only light left in the world. No billboards, no houses, the occasional reflective marker on the shoulder catching the light and disappearing. I've driven this stretch hundreds of times. I know its rhythms. I know where the grades are, where the road straightens out for long enough to make your eyes go loose, where the rest areas are if you need to pull over and walk around for 5 minutes to stay sharp. I had the CB running, volume low, the usual chatter of nighttime drivers. A couple of guys comparing notes on a way station in Winslow, a woman arguing calmly with dispatch about a revised delivery window, the general background hum of the trucking community doing what it does in the dark. I was somewhere east of Flagstaff, past the meteor crater exit, when the chatter started to thin out. That happens after midnight. The regulars find their parking spots and the radio goes quiet, and it's just you and the road and whatever you've got in your head to keep you company. That's when I heard it. Breaker 19. This is Desert Rose looking for a radio check. Anybody got their ears on out there? I want to tell you what it felt like to hear that voice. I had been to Linda Martinez's funeral 6 months earlier, September, out in Tucson, at a church that was standing room only, with drivers who'd come from 3 states in both directions. Half the people there I'd never met in person. Only as call signs, only as voices. And yet the grief in that room was as real as any I've felt in my life. Linda had been driving for 15 years. She knew more people across more miles of highway than most people know in a lifetime. She was killed on August 18th, a Tuesday, on Interstate 10 near Tucson. A drunk driver in a pickup truck crossed the median at 2:47 in the morning and hit her head on. She died at the scene. The drunk driver survived with a broken arm and a story he'll have to live with for the rest of his life. I stood at the back of that church and looked at the photograph they'd put on the easel near the altar. Linda in her red Kenworth ball cap, grinning at the camera with the kind of unguarded joy that some people carry through their whole lives without ever losing it. And I thought about 11 minutes at a truck stop in Flagstaff. I thought about the sugar caddy sliding across the counter. I thought about "Stay safe out there, cowboy," and how she'd said it like she meant it, the way people say things when they actually mean them. I drove home after the service and I sat in my apartment for 2 days, which is the longest I've gone without driving since I was 23 years old. So when I heard that voice on Channel 19, 6 months later, February, dead of night in the Arizona desert, I did not immediately understand what I was hearing. My hand reached for the mic on its own. 28 years of road reflex, automatic as breathing. "Desert Rose, you got the Midnight Cowboy here. You're coming in 5 by 5. How about eastbound traffic conditions?" The response came back clear and even, no static, no distortion. "Thanks for the check, Midnight Cowboy. Roads looking good all the way to Albuquerque. No bears in the bushes, no construction delays. You stay safe out there." I held the mic in my hand and did not respond for a long moment. That voice, that exact cadence, honey over gravel. My heart was doing something strange in my chest. Not quite racing, more like stumbling, like a man who's missed a step in the dark. I checked my mirrors out of habit. Empty highway, stars above, the heater running low. I keyed the mic again. Desert Rose, this is Midnight Cowboy again. Can I ask your 20? Mile marker 201 on Interstate 40 westbound, just past the meteor crater exit. Beautiful night out here. You can see every star in the sky. I looked at my GPS. I was at mile marker 195, 6 miles back. I want to be honest with you about what I was thinking in that moment, because I think it matters. Part of me, the practical part, the Odessa, Texas part, the part that fixed things and kept moving, was constructing explanations, radio frequencies bleeding over from old recordings, some kind of CB relay malfunction. A woman who sounded like Linda, using the same call sign out of tribute or coincidence. The other part of me, the part I don't talk about much, the part that had stood at the back of that church and felt something break loose in his chest. That part knew. I pushed my rig harder than I should have. The speedometer climbed. The desert streamed past in the dark. I watched the mile markers tick by. 196, 197, 198, and kept my eyes ahead, looking for taillights that never appeared. Mile marker 201 came and went. No truck, no taillights, nothing but empty road and the cold white stars. I kept going, kept calling. Desert Rose, this is Midnight Cowboy. I'm at your last 20 and I'm not seeing you. Come back. Silence. Then around mile marker 210, her voice again. Breaker 19, this is Desert Rose with an important message for all drivers. On Interstate 40 tonight, there's black ice forming near mile marker 237. I repeat, black ice at mile marker 237. Slow it down and keep your distance. I grabbed the mic. Desert Rose, this is Midnight Cowboy. Where are you now? I've been running hard trying to catch up to you and I can't find your rig. A pause. Longer than a radio delay. The kind of pause that has weight. Midnight Cowboy, you don't need to catch up to me. Just need you to pass along that message about the black ice. Other drivers need to know. Copy that, Desert Rose, but I'd still like to meet up if possible. Another pause. Some meetings aren't meant to happen on this side of the road, Cowboy. You understand? My hands were steady on the wheel. I made them stay that way. Linda, I said. I didn't use her call sign. I said her name. Is that really you? The CB was quiet for a long time. Long enough that I thought I'd lost the signal, that whatever strange frequency had opened up between us had closed again. I watched the mile markers. 212, 213. The heater hummed. The engine ran smooth. Then her voice came back, and it was different. Not the professional trucker cadence, not the road condition voice, the calm and competent Desert Rose who'd been calling in weather updates and bear reports for 15 years. This was something quieter, something that sat behind all of that, underneath the competence, behind the honey over gravel. I've been trying to reach my dispatcher for 6 months, she said. They keep saying the number's been disconnected, and my family, they don't seem to hear when I call. I took a breath. Linda, you were in an accident back in August. Silence. On Interstate 10 near Tucson. You didn't make it. The CB stayed quiet for so long I started counting seconds. I got to 47. That can't be right, she said finally. I just talked to my daughter yesterday. She's starting college next month. She needs help with tuition. I've got to keep running loads, got to keep earning. I thought about the funeral. I thought about the photograph on the easel, that grin, that unguarded joy. I thought about what Linda's daughter had looked like standing in the front pew, a girl of 18 who'd graduated high school that same spring and was supposed to be starting her life. Linda, I said, and I was surprised by how steady my voice came out. Your daughter is doing fine. How would you know that? Because I was there at the service. The trucking community took up a collection after the accident. A lot of people loved you, Linda, more than you probably knew. Another long silence. She has a full scholarship now, I said. I heard it from someone at the service. She's studying to be a nurse. She said she wanted to help people the way the truckers helped her family after the accident. What came through the CB then? I'm not entirely sure what to call it. The signal wavered like static, but it wasn't static. It was the sound of something releasing, like a long breath, like a weight being set down after a very long carry. Is she really okay? Linda's voice quieter now. My little girl? She's more than okay. She's going to be a wonderful nurse. She's got your toughness. The sound again, definitely not static. I've been so worried, she said. I didn't know. I didn't know. We drove together for the next 20 minutes. Or whatever version of together was possible in that moment, in that strange space between whatever she was now and whatever I was. And I told her everything I knew about her daughter, the scholarship, the nursing program, the way the girl had stood up at the service and spoken about her mother with a clarity and grace that had made grown men weep. And Linda talked, not about being dead. She didn't frame it that way. I don't think she fully could yet. But about driving, about the routes she knew, about a rest stop in New Mexico that had the best vending machine coffee she'd ever tasted, which wasn't saying much, but it was saying something. About the way the desert looked at 4 in the morning when the sky starts to shift from black to a deep, bruised purple, and you're the only person awake for 50 miles in any direction. She talked about her daughter the way mothers talk about their children when they think no one is listening, with a fierce, helpless tenderness that has no other name. And somewhere in the middle of all of it, something happened to me that I didn't expect. I thought about Melissa, my daughter in Fort Collins who teaches 2nd grade and has my stubbornness, who I call more than I see, who grew up with a father who was better at navigating highways than at navigating the distance between 2 chairs at a kitchen table. I thought about the times I'd been on the road when I should have been home. I thought about her voice on the phone, always careful and cheerful, in the way kids learn to be when they've accepted a certain kind of absence. I thought about the last time I'd actually sat across a table from her and had a meal and been fully present, not half thinking about the next run, the next load, the next stretch of highway. Linda's voice came back through the CB. Cowboy, you still there? Yeah, I said. I'm still here. You got family. I looked out at the highway, the stars, the long, empty dark. A daughter, I said. Fort Collins, she teaches kids. You see her much? I didn't answer right away. Not as much as I should, I said finally. A pause, then Linda's voice, gentle and direct in the way it always was. Fix that, cowboy. I was at mile marker 220 when she brought up the black ice again. You need to slow down at 237, she said, and the professional calm was back in her voice. The desert rose cadence, the road condition voice. Temperature's going to drop fast at that elevation. There's going to be black ice across both lanes right at the marker. How do you know this, Linda? A pause. Because I've been driving this route every night for 6 months, she said, trying to warn people, trying to prevent what happened to me from happening to anyone else. Most drivers can't hear me. The signal doesn't come through. Why can I hear you? A longer pause. I don't know exactly. Maybe because you knew me. Maybe because you were at the service and you carried something of me with you after. Maybe it doesn't work the way I'd expect it to work. A beat. I've been doing this for 6 months and I still don't understand most of it. There's something else, I said. About the black ice at 237? What about it? I'm at mile marker 220 right now and my temperature gauge is showing 45 degrees. That's too warm for ice formation. Silence. Check your calendar, cowboy. What's today's date? I looked at the dashboard display, February 18th. And when was the accident? I remembered the funeral program, the date printed at the top, August 18th, 6 months ago today. Then you need to slow down at mile marker 237, she said quietly. There's going to be a pickup truck with no headlights crossing the median at 2:47 a.m. I can't stop what happened to me from happening, but I can stop it from happening to you. I looked at my watch. 2:35 a.m. mile marker 237 was 15 minutes ahead at my current speed. I let my foot come off the accelerator. I want to tell you what it's like to slow down when everything in you, every instinct, every deadline, every practical bone in a practical man's body is telling you to keep moving. I dropped to 55, then 50, then 45. A Freightliner passed me on the left doing 70, and I watched his taillights shrink in the distance. Another truck came up behind me, flashed his brights once, then moved around me. The CB crackled with a passing driver's voice, something about a slow mover in the right lane. I keyed the mic and warned him about black ice at 237. He didn't respond, but he slowed down. Linda was quiet for those 15 minutes, not gone. The channel was still open. I could feel it somehow, the way you can feel a presence in a dark room even before your eyes adjust. But quiet, like she was watching, like she was holding her breath. Mile marker 230, mile marker 233, mile marker 235. The stars were still out. The temperature gauge on my dash read 44 degrees. By any rational measurement, there was no reason to be traveling at 45 miles an hour on an empty interstate in the middle of the night. Mile marker 236. I took my foot completely off the accelerator and let the truck coast. Mile marker 237. At exactly 2:47 a.m., a pickup truck with no headlights came across the median. I don't have words that fully capture what those 3 seconds looked like. I've tried in the months since to find them, and I keep coming up short. The pickup was dark. No lights, no warning. Just a shape resolving out of the darkness on my left. Low and fast and completely wrong. The kind of movement that your brain registers as threat before it registers as anything else. It crossed the median barrier at an angle, airborne for a moment, and passed in front of my bumper with maybe 10 feet of clearance before slamming into the concrete barrier on the right side of the highway. The impact sound was enormous, not an explosion. More like a compression, a sudden rearrangement of mass, the sound of physics doing what physics does when two objects disagree about where they're supposed to be. I got my truck stopped on the shoulder and sat there for a moment with my hands on the wheel, listening to my own heartbeat. Then I grabbed the CB. Desert Rose, you there? Silence. Linda. The channel opened, her voice, and it was different now. Lighter, somehow. Like something had been resolved, like a question that had been sitting unanswered for 6 months had finally found its answer. Thank you for listening, Midnight Cowboy. Linda. Thank you for slowing down, and thank you for telling me about my daughter. I called 911, gave them the mile marker, described the truck. Then I picked up the CB again. Linda, will I hear from you again? A pause, then quietly. Not on this channel, cowboy. I think it's time for me to find a different road. Linda, you take care of yourself out there. A beat. And fix things with your daughter. Don't wait. How do you... Keep the shiny side up and the greasy side down, cowboy. That was the last thing Desert Rose ever said on Channel 19. I sat on the shoulder of Interstate 40 and waited for the paramedics. The driver of the pickup was gone by the time they arrived. Blood alcohol 3 times the legal limit, they told me later. Probably never felt a thing. I gave my statement to the highway patrol and watched the tow trucks work and didn't say anything about what had happened on the CB, because there are things that happen on the road at night that you keep to yourself, not because you're ashamed of them, but because they belong to the dark and the highway and the particular silence that exists at 3 a.m. in the Arizona desert, and they don't translate well into the daylight. I drove straight through to Phoenix, delivered the load, slept for 10 hours in a motel near the depot, the kind of sleep that doesn't have any dreams in it, just a long darkness and then light. When I woke up, I called Melissa. Not a quick check-in, not the usual 5-minute conversation where we covered the basics and left everything important unsaid. I called her and I told her I wanted to come to Fort Collins, that I wanted to have dinner, a real dinner at a real table, and I wanted to hear about her students and her life and all the things I'd been letting slip past me while I was out on the road. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Dad, are you okay?" I told her I was fine, better than fine. I drove to Fort Collins the following week. Melissa made pasta. We sat at her kitchen table for 3 hours and I listened more than I talked, which is not a thing that comes naturally to me, but I worked at it. She told me about a boy in her class who'd been struggling with reading and had suddenly, in November, just cracked the code. Had walked up to her desk one morning and read an entire picture book out loud, stumbling only once, and then looked up at her with an expression of pure shock and delight. She told me about her apartment and her friends and a hiking trip she'd taken in the fall to Rocky Mountain National Park. I sat there and I was present, fully present, not half somewhere else. At the end of the night, standing at her door, she hugged me for a long time. "You should come more often," she said. "I'm going to," I said. And I meant it the way you mean things when someone you can't explain has told you not to wait. I've driven I-40 through Arizona 4 times since February. Every time I monitor Channel 19 through the whole stretch, not obsessively, not with white knuckles and held breath, but with a quiet attention, the way you watch for deer at the edge of your headlights, present but not desperate, listening but not grasping. The airwaves stay quiet where Desert Rose used to be. I don't know exactly what Linda Martinez was in those hours on February 18th. I don't know if she knew what she was, or if that knowledge came to her gradually, like a signal clarifying out of static. I don't know if there's a road out there beyond the ones I've traveled, or if the people we lose just find different routes and keep moving. What I know is this: she drove that stretch of highway for 6 months, trying to warn people, trying to stop what had happened to her from happening to someone else. 6 months of dead air and closed frequencies, and drivers who couldn't hear her. And then one night on a date that meant something. The 6-month mark, the anniversary, whatever strange calendar the dead keep. The signal came through. She saved my life. That's not a metaphor. That's a statement of fact, the kind that practical men from Odessa, Texas deal in. When I pass mile marker 237 now, I key the mic. I don't say much. Sometimes just her call sign. Sometimes her name. Sometimes nothing at all. Just an open channel, a moment of acknowledgement, a way of saying I remember into the dark. And sometimes, if the conditions are right, the temperature dropping, the stars hard and bright, the CB quiet, I swear I can hear something on the frequency, not words exactly, more like the feeling of words, the ghost of a voice. Honey over gravel. Stay safe out there, cowboy. There's one more thing I need to tell you. About 3 months after that night, I was running a load through Tucson, and I looked up Linda's daughter. Her name is Rosa. She was in her first year of nursing school at the University of Arizona, doing well by every account. I didn't have a plan for what I was going to say. I just had Linda's voice in my head, telling me to fix things, telling me not to wait, and I figured that applied in more directions than one. I found her contact through the trucking association that had organized the scholarship fund, sent her a short email introducing myself, said I'd known her mother from the road, said I'd been at the service, said I hoped she was doing well. She wrote back the same day. We met for coffee near the university campus, a small place on a side street with mismatched chairs and good espresso. Rosa had her mother's eyes and her mother's directness. That quality of looking at you and actually seeing you, not just the surface of you that some people have and most people don't. She told me about nursing school, about how hard it was and how right it felt, about her professors and her classmates and a clinical rotation she'd done at the hospital where she'd held the hand of an elderly man who didn't have any family and stayed with him because he shouldn't have been alone. She had her mother's toughness. She had her mother's heart. At the end of our coffee, she said something that I've thought about every day since. I used to feel like she was still around somehow, Rosa said. In the first few months after, like she wasn't quite gone yet. I'd be driving somewhere late at night and I'd feel her, like she was watching, making sure I was okay. She smiled, a little self-conscious. I know that sounds crazy. I looked at her across the table. It doesn't sound crazy at all, I said. She seemed to think about that. I don't feel it anymore, she said finally. I don't know when it stopped. Sometime in the winter, I think, like she finally let go, like she knew I was going to be okay. February, I thought, sometime in February. She knew, I said. Rosa looked at me. You sound certain. I thought about a CB radio crackling to life in the Arizona desert. I thought about a voice that shouldn't have been possible, carrying a message 6 months after the woman who owned it was laid in the ground. I thought about 10 feet of clearance and a pickup truck with no headlights, and a daughter who was going to be a nurse, and a father who was finally, slowly, learning to be present. I am, I said. We stayed for another hour. When we finally stood up to leave, Rosa hugged me quickly, the way you hug someone you've just decided to trust. She had good taste in road friends, Rosa said. I drove back to the highway with that in my chest, and I carried it for a long time. I still drive I-40, still run the Phoenix hauls, the Albuquerque runs, the long desert stretches where the stars are hard and the nights are cold, and the CB carries voices across hundreds of miles of dark. I still monitor Channel 19. I still key the mic at mile marker 237. Some nights it's quiet. Some nights there's chatter. Other drivers, other voices, the ordinary noise of the road doing what the road does. But every now and then, when the temperature's right and the traffic's thin and the desert is doing that thing it does at 4 in the morning, turning a deep, bruised purple, the sky shifting from black to almost blue, I hear something. Not a voice, not exactly. More like the feeling a voice leaves behind, the shape of it, the warmth. And I know, in the way that practical men from Odessa, Texas, don't usually know things. In my bones, in my chest, in whatever part of me kept watch at the back of a church in September and felt something break loose. I know that Linda Martinez found her different road. I know she's driving it right now, somewhere out past the frequencies I can reach, somewhere the signals don't carry. And I know she's doing just fine. Keep the shiny side up and the greasy side down.